Hello and welcome to another Ahead of the Curve show. Welcome to the show, everybody. This week I've got some members from Falcon's creative group on the show with me. So I'd like to welcome them on board. Saham and Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
No,
Thanks,
absolutely. Absolutely. So as every show, I kind of want to get things kicked off by getting a little bit of information about your backgrounds and maybe find out a little bit about yourselves, what you guys do, and how you work within the Falcon's creative group team or family. So how about we start with Saham?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So my background is actually in visual effects. Actually started out as a visual effects artist, but I have also a background in computer engineering, and kind of married the two and worked on film, games, aerospace, anything that had 3D basically and technology integrated with it. And so worked at many studios, worked at Dave School as their director of technology. And then I think Jason was watching me one day and said, we need this guy. And then got a call and brought me over to Falcons.
Yeah, I reeled him in.
So you're trying to tell me that Jason's the recruiter?
I do. That's one of my many hats. Yes.
So Jason, how about a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my background's actually more in the traditional film sense, and I went to Florida State Film School, which has a great program, very hands-on with film production, like a Hollywood set would be run. During that time, I actually did do a very small class with a mentor that was a VFX legend named Stuart Robertson, who won the Academy Award for What Dreams May Come. And he's the one that taught me visual effects. And from there, I kind of took those skills out into the real world and started my own production company in LA. I graduated right at the bottom of the recession, 2008, 2009. There weren't a lot of jobs out there. And so I created my own company and started getting work that way. We were based in LA for a while. And I lived 4 blocks from Digital Domain, which is a awesome visual effects studio founded by James Cameron, and at that time was owned by Michael Bay, or partially owned. And I applied. It was 4 blocks away from my house, and I wanted some stability. And they said, "Yeah, we want to hire you in a studio in Florida." So.
So you're like, Florida? Are you serious?
Yeah. So I ended up packing up my stuff, moving back to Florida, and got to see some amazing projects come to life there. Worked on some amazing, film productions. I was the director of special projects there, so I was working a little bit with all the different departments. We were doing military simulation, we were doing 3D animation, visual effects. We were starting a brand new school program called the Digital Domain Institute at the time. And eventually that company, which is unfortunate with a lot of visual effects companies in the industry, ended up kind of imploding. And instead of moving back to California, there was Falcons was looking for to build up their media studio. At the time they had a bunch of projects for Marvel and Cartoon Network that we were doing for a big park in Dubai. And I signed on at the very beginning of those projects and have been here now a little over 7 years.
That's fantastic.
Yep. And through that time, I came in as a producer. Now I'm the vice president of digital media. So I help, run the entire digital media studio, which includes everything from, baked media production, 3D animation, visual effects, some post-production work. And now an ever-growing, real-time division, an interactive division where we're doing a lot more, utilizing GPU power and utilizing some of the latest softwares and technologies out there. And Saham's a big part of that as well.
Yeah, I definitely know how that is.
Yeah.
I definitely know that boat pretty well.
Yeah.
So guys, could you give our viewers a little kind of background on who Falcon's creative group is and what you guys specialize and what you guys do?
Sure. I'm actually rocking the 20th anniversary t-shirt right now.
Nice.
We had a big 20th anniversary party back in February, which is when the company was founded in 2000, February 2000. The company started out really primarily as a design firm and doing theater design and experience design. for a variety of different mediums. Actually, our first project was the renovation of Spaceship Earth at Epcot, the big Epcot ball.
Yeah.
We did the whole renovation and post-show experience. And that was kind of what kicked us off. And from that point on, we kept getting bigger and bigger projects in theme parks and master planning in resorts, in museums. And as we continued to grow, it was also, the evolution of media-based attractions and kind of how that has continued to mature over the last 20 years. And so as media-based attractions became more and more prevalent or more involved and more technical, even with show control and all these other systems, we followed that journey and continued to build up, a media division that spawned from the need in the industry. We really wanted to control both the design and the content creation. We felt was so closely tied, and we wanted that to be integrated. That's what really spawned the digital media division of Falcons.
Awesome. So Saham, I want to ask you, what's been some of your biggest challenges in mixing the technology along with some of these concepts and some of these stories that the designers kind of come up with?
Well, I think the biggest challenge overall ends up becoming making sure that technology isn't shoved in your face, right? In the end, it's
use it. You have it. Use it.
Nobody's going to enjoy that. And so working with the designers, there's always a great vision, and then it's how we execute it and finding the right balance of that technology to get the user to engage. But luckily, we've been really successful at doing that. Not without lots of hard work and late nights. Here's all this stuff out. But just keeping the technology kind of behind the scenes, that's key. We just don't want to burden anybody with it. You don't want to have to worry about both on the guest side and operations side of dealing with tech. You just want to have a good experience.
And there's plenty of times where the technology that we really need doesn't exist yet. So sometimes we have to invent our own, or kit bash several existing products, or kind of work with the developers of hardware to get ultimately what we need out of them for the end experience. We're always chasing what we want to achieve versus how can we use these products in a final product.
So that brings me to an interesting question, because I've been to your studio, once in the past, and you guys were working on a really cool project where it was kind of a floating platform, kind of a circular floating platform where the audience would sit and the whole thing would pivot and move and rotate, kind of giving you that 4D experience. So what are some of the technologies, the ones that you can share that you guys are working on or developing in-house?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot, and a lot that we haven't even announced or released yet that we're looking forward to doing so soon, that are even more so focused on technology in real time. But the product you described is our Circumotion product. We have over 27 patents on ride systems and technologies. The Circumotion actually was built and first installed in Dubai, using the Marvel, Hulk, Iron Man IP. So it was really cool to not only make a first of its kind attraction, but do it with such a big brand like that. And it's covered in a 3D 360 dome theater, and you can move up to 22 miles an hour on this rotating platform. It also has pitch and heave as well. So it's not a Gravitron, is when people kind of think of it, they think
Sounds like it could be a Gravitron.
You can, as a matter of fact, with that amount of speed, you can definitely get stuck to your seat. To the point of why even have seatbelts but there are seatbelts certainly, because it's really meant to be a story device where you can stop and spin and heave up and down and tilt, and not just have it be this perpetual spinning machine. But it's a phenomenal product. It's one of my personal favorite projects that we've worked on here. Saham, do you want to speak to some of the other products we've recently developed?
Yeah, I think in a good example of, there was a need, we recognized it and knew that there's nothing out there to fix this need, was our product for Jane that we just utilized, Falcon's Vision, which is basically it's a headset that allows for augmented reality at location-based entertainment or anywhere else. So we fully in-house built the hardware, full tracking, and then also developed the content for this for the Jane Goodall exhibit. And, it's been successful. Obviously, things are a little bit different now with COVID, but we are already looking at adapting the exact same concept to more of a frictionless AR experience, if you will, that doesn't require the headset, but essentially provides the exact same experience.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, developing an AR headset was really out of a need. Again, looking at products that are out there. Certainly, there are other AR headsets. You have the HoloLens, which we were beta testers on the first version of HoloLens. That really got us stoked on AR, kind of headset technology to begin with. And then, of course, there's Magic Leap that's out there in the marketplace, and now you're having a few other companies like North and these other AR glasses.
Which was just acquired by Google.
Yeah, and Apple just announced they're going to be releasing their own AR glasses here in the coming year. But for us, I mean, we wanted to create a system that was going to be robust enough to be, not have any buttons, to not have an onboard computer system that people could, tap into, something that would be durable, something that would be hygienic. So these are all things we have to think about, when we're looking at different products. And if it's not out there, we recognize that we had to create our own, which I'm really proud of. It runs 120 FPS, left eye, right eye. And it's got a better field of view, I think, than HoloLens and Magic Leap. But it's very specific in what its goal is, right? It's not meant to be all things to all people.
Yeah.
It's not one of these.
So yeah, exactly. It's meant to do its job and do it really well. And so with those parameters, you're able to create something really pretty awesome that's not even existing in the marketplace because the needs are different.
That's fantastic. I just wanted to once again kind of welcome the viewers that are kind of tuning in today. If you guys have any questions, we try and keep these pretty informal. So please feel free to post questions in the comments as we're going along. We'd be more than happy to answer them and engage with you guys as you're watching. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Again, I have Saham and Jason from Falcon's Creative Group on board with us today. So I have a fun little question, Jason. Working in themed entertainment and going to all these parks, what has been one of the most memorable experiences that you had as a child?
As a child?
Yes.
I grew up in Florida.
Or your first experiences in going to a themed park.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Florida, so and I was actually in Tampa, so I had Busch Gardens, Adventure Island, Disney around the corner, Universal, all these opportunities to visit theme parks and get that exposure, and also be able to understand the childlike wonder that's associated with it, which I actually feel like is an important value. If you come into this industry as an adult, you may not really recognize that intrinsic value of capturing that child's imagination. For me, I think the most memorable moment in my youth was visiting Islands of Adventure for the first time and seeing I'm going on the Spider-Man ride, which is still one of my favorite attractions. But that was one of the best integrations of media and ride technology I'd ever seen, and still think it stands up to this day as one of the best. So 20 years later. So that to me was probably the most memorable. I was just blown away. And any great attraction to me is like a great magic trick, and it's an illusion and you don't know how it's done.
Yeah. There's got to be some magic there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So. Always a question mark. So, how about yourself?
Yeah, I've got a interesting nerdy story. So, I had done the local Florida attractions. I actually got a chance to come to Universal Studios opening week, where the ride didn't work, and so a couple years later, I think when they actually opened T2 3D, I went to see this, and that was my Spider-Man experience. I was blown away at what I just saw, the integration of live action people on stage, and then the immersion factor, and you're watching stereo content. And again, it was T2, so it was a huge IP at the time. And watching that, completely nerding out, and really actually kind of kickstarted my interest in computer graphics and seeing what I was seeing on screen. And then the nerdy part ended up realizing, once Falcons was tapping my shoulder, is Cecil actually worked on that project when I was a kid, projection design, the Ambler and Falcons. And so, got lucky enough to actually work with the dude who accomplished something that really, set my course when I was younger. So
I love it when that kind of thing happens, the irony, and you just the coincidence of it into that scale, and not knowing where life is going to bring you and who you're going to meet along the way always fascinates me.
Yeah.
Always, always, always. So there's a member from the audience was asking how social distancing how has social distancing changed the way Falcon's team works?
Yeah, Tom, as our director of technology, had a lot to do with the transition. Certainly, I mean, Florida was one of the first states to go to full lockdown, so we had to shift everyone remote. That was certainly a big a shift, and certainly something that we've continued to maintain. Saham and I are both chatting from different places in our office. We're keeping a lot of the meeting rooms and community spaces open and not really filled with people. And we have everyone wearing masks now. We have different shifts and schedules and whatnot to limit our capacity in our studio. But everyone's still pretty much working at 100%, whether they're here or at home. And we've been doing a lot more meetings via Teams and via other, video chat platforms, a lot of screen sharing. And some things I think will keep and persist beyond even the social distancing that are actually good habits that have come from this, I would say.
Yeah, I think there's been some good things. I started this whole ahead of the curve thing basically due to COVID and everything coming into place, and seeing all these trade shows kind of cancel or postpone, and noticing that there were a bunch of really good presenters that had great material to share, but we're not going to be able to share it anymore. So I said, let's create ahead of the curve and bring on some of these guests and some of these people that were going to be speaking and give them an opportunity to use a platform to deliver it. And it's been a really positive kind of result of things that have happened due to COVID. And I do believe that there's a lot of good opportunities in general, just from this whole thing happening. It's kind of been a little bit of an eye-opener in some ways as to how liberated and how free we truly were moving around our environments. And now, there's been some new restrictions and some new challenges, and finding out ways to be able to overcome those, or what the future might look like. Especially in kind of areas where there are large masses of people, is kind of fascinating to try and figure out how those problems are going to be resolved. Yeah. So speaking about some of that stuff, how do these effects, or how does the situation kind of affect what you guys are doing now and what you're planning on doing and moving forward?
Well, at least for us, we see the light at the end of the tunnel, because a lot of our, we're not operators that have a bottom line. We're not operating a theme park that's currently closed. We're looking at building new theme parks that may be opening in a year or 2 years, and seeing, that hopefully by then a lot of this dust should have settled. And a lot of our work too is international. So, we're looking at it through the lens of the United States. It's a little bit different than looking at it internationally, where most of the cases now have dropped to a fairly safe level. And so, yeah, it's been a hiccup. Certainly some projects have been delayed. But for us, it's not like, we're operating at a loss, because we're focusing on these projects a couple years out. I would say from our experiences and whatnot, certainly Saham kind of nailed it on the head, which I think his video disappeared. I don't know what happened to him. But, Saham, you look awfully gray. But for us, I think the biggest shift has been creating more of a frictionless experience, less tactile in as far as touch goes, and trying to use technology to create an immersive experience that maybe doesn't involve actually touching a touch screen. You can use gesture, you can use voice activation. So looking at other means of storytelling and utilization of technology. And hopefully Saham returns at some point.
I was just gonna, there he is. Saham, welcome back. Or at least I think he might be there. Somebody else is asking, what do you guys look for in new hires or collaborators, and do you have any suggestions on approaching companies like yours, which might be an interesting question to answer?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is honestly passion. Number one thing by far. That goes for both sides, for both new hires and collaborators, because we recognize, and we have a lot of young talent here, we recognize not everyone knows everything, right? But you have to have the will and desire to want to learn things and want to pick up new skills. And certainly that's how Saham and I have grown. And I'm sure, Jeffrey, you're the same way.
Yeah.
You have to have that open mind and that willingness. And that if you don't have a passion for this industry, you'll burn out and be out in 5 years. But if you really love what you do, you'll find a way. And similarly with our vendors and collaborators, we want people that are also just as passionate about the project as we are. We're creating a group experience. We're all coming together to create the experience. And if there's a weak link in that chain, you're going to lose your immersion factor, certainly when you're creating, different locations. So I think that's the number one thing for
Tracy,
passion matters.
Passion matters. Absolutely. I would say passion is one of the main keys that has certainly driven me along the course of my career as of date, and being really passionate about the technology, about the work that I'm working in. It doesn't even matter about the technology, but about the work and the drive, and also not be afraid to really fail either. Just go forward, push forward. Somebody once taught me that it's better to get something out the door than try and perfect it. So just push it out, push yourself out there, push yourself forward. Even if it's work that you don't think is good, just get it out there and test the waters and see what people think. You'd be surprised on what feedback you might get from that.
Yeah, I always say art is never done, right? You just are forced to stop and put the pencil down. It's certainly the case. But you have to have that mentality too. You have to kind of think, man, I wish the best people, the most successful people are the ones that are never happy, truly happy with their work. And they're always kind of chasing the dragon, so to speak, thinking that one day they'll do a project that they're truly 100% proud of. But I would be willing to bet that Picasso and Van Gogh are also like, man, I wish I did that differently. So it's just the artist's curse a little bit.
It truly is.
Yeah, something you have to accept.
It truly is. I started just a quick little tidbit. I started my career actually in audio a long time ago. And I quickly started to realize the differences between pre-recorded audio and live audio. So I started in pre-recorded and working in some sound studios, really small sound studios at the time, but it was easier because you were mastering and you're working and you're doing things kind of to a select group of people's ears as opposed to the masses. And when you moved into a live sound environment, it quickly changed. The whole dynamic of it changes. And you're now producing for not just a select group, but you're now producing for hundreds or thousands of people. Yeah. And everybody's perception, especially audibly, is very diverse, and there's a lot of opinions on the way that things sound. I find in a lot of ways more than the way things look. So I move more over into a visual field.
I could definitely, I think we can relate to that because, what really I think is one of our most special qualities or our secret sauce is our on-site integration side of things, right? Because you can have a great plan. It's great to have a plan, but it's all about the execution of that and the integration of it. So if we're creating content or media or real time, we really put a heavy emphasis on, being on site, doing the right programming, working with the other vendors, whether it be the lighting vendors, the ride vendors, the show programmers. We all have to be kind of playing in harmony, and we have to be a part of that. And the art directors and the scenic fabricators, we all have to kind of come together and see how it looks on site, because it's one thing to do it in a lab. It's a totally different thing when you bring it out on site. And you're dealing with all sorts of conditions. So whether it be light pollution or sound reverberation and
sand.
Sand.
What?
I do a lot of projects in the Middle East, so we deal with a lot.
Yeah, there's always technical challenges, and then of course there's the dynamics of the environment, but even the viewership and who you're catering to geographically. That's right. You might have an idea or a vision of delivering some sort of an experience in the United States, for example, and then you're going to move it over to the Middle East, but you don't take under consideration their culture and the way that they live on a day-to-day life. And there's a lot to be said about that. So my good friend AJ's watching the show. Thanks, AJ. Thanks for your support. He's got a question asking, spaceships versus fantasy forests. What's your favorite thing to design?
Oh, man.
I don't know which one of you wants to take on that one.
I'm a huge.
We'll go with Saham.
Yeah, I'm a huge space nut, and I love checking out designs of theoretical spacecraft, and so that would be my opinion.
your number one choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm with Sam here too. I like sci-fi as well. I think slight edge over fantasy, but both equally a big part of our work here. Certainly, we're doing a lot of each. Fantasy forests tend to be more ornate and harder too, so they scare me. Doing outer space, I'm like, let's lickety split. We can knock that out, no problem. As far as thundering goes. So
I see black, lots and lots of black.
Yeah. That's right.
With little white dots all over the place.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
And
you guys
from an expense, you could get 20, 30 times more out of doing shows in outer space than you can trying to do something in a forest. So it's cheaper, but we do like to mix it up for sure.
So I did want to kind of reel things back in. Doug, thanks for bringing this up, back into kind of what we were talking about storytelling. And Doug is asking, can you talk about storytelling and audience engagement and different people wanting different amounts of involvement at the same time? So I see Saham is twiddling his fingers. Saham, you want to take this one?
Sure. Jason could definitely back up on this, but it's definitely a new age when it comes to these type of guest experiences. Historically, we go to these rides and it's very linear. You go from the beginning to the end. It's always the same. And now we're diving into a world of dynamic stories where you can have engagement with the audience at different levels. And the ride may never be the same twice. And so these type of technologies, specifically in the real-time world and the ride system technologies that are enabling us to do this, they're starting to hit, and we are very excitedly working behind the scenes on this type of stuff, allowing people to go to an attraction. And I think in the first iteration will probably be you actually get to interact with the story and walk away with a different outcome. The second generation of this will be you get to engage in the story without even being there, and then go to this specific attraction and have a unique experience based on everything you've done before even getting there. And then it's just an ever building lore. Is just a one-off.
Yeah, take that experience with you, come back and build upon it too.
Yeah.
So it's the idea of
really evolving a story that never ends, essentially.
That's right.
Yeah, engage as little or as much as you want, really. So the experience is going to scale to whatever you want.
Yeah, I found that very, very fascinating recently with the evolution of gaming engines in particular, and the technologies that they've been bringing to the table has really, I think, enabled us to be able to be a lot more dynamic and a lot more diverse, to be able to quickly and adaptively change things on the fly. Yeah. And even the way that media is being created, is right now is kind of on a teetering edge of pivoting and falling over from the more traditional approaches into using different and upcoming products to be able to achieve those results, which is really, really fascinating in the show.
The democratization of a lot of these technologies in the last 10 years, I'm sure you've seen it, Jeffrey, is the fact that we've seen technologies that literally landed on Kickstarter that were just, a flash in the pan, that have now evolved over the last 10 years. I'll use an example, the Leap Motion, how to get, it never really took off. HP licensed it and people used it, and it was like, all right, cool, but there's never anything substantial that has come out of it. And now you look at it and you're like, wait a second, I can't touch screens? Oh, okay, now this is really important. It's no longer a little gimmicky device. Now we can actually start using it for input and gestures and interaction. And now it's picking up legs. And it's just watching these technologies, ebb and flow. And then there's a market that comes out of nowhere, and in this case being COVID, but other things like you were mentioning of the pivot of traditional CG, art now moving into it's graphically almost one-to-one parody, doing it in real time. There's a pipeline shift and a workflow shift, but we can achieve a lot more, but you have to work within certain bounds, and it's the balance of all these things. And especially, let's do this for a room of 50 people versus one guy sitting in his house playing on a
And I think that's really interesting when we come down into the actual part of the story, because if you look at things like a VR experience, where you can you have more of an individualized experience because people are being worked into one, but you're now starting to see a lot of different platforms try and expand upon that and bring in bigger groups of people into these VR environments and let them engage and move around and basically talk to each other or speak to each other or interact with each other in different ways. But being able to take those and scale them and change those experiences, what are some of the challenges that you guys have had in taking a story that might be somewhat individualized and deploying that out to the masses by the uses of different technologies? That's a loaded question.
I don't know, Jason. You want to start with this? I got a lot to say, but
yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge has always been there's these products that normally hit, and they're almost always focused on consumer markets, and consumer markets were never meant for 50 people. Example, the Vive, which is a great product, but was never meant for 500 people to put it on in a day, right? Yeah. And so it's finding ways to adopt, whether fitting mechanisms, the delivery format, whatever it might be, adopting it, when it was designed for a one-off, one person, and making it in operation sense something that can be used by 500. Because the reality is, in any of these experiences, you have to get volume, right? You have to move people through. And if things are restrictive and or time, you put it on a headset, it's going to take 5 to 20 seconds to get it on, fit it, make sure focus is right.
That's if you know what you're doing.
In a dark space.
It's like VR of everybody in America, maybe 5% have actually experienced it. The masses have not. And so, that was one of the problems that we saw when we did the Busch Gardens project, a Battle of Ire, that we recognized this was going to be an issue. And so we found a solution. We created a head mounting mechanism that can go through a washing machine to sanitize and can allow people to just, we integrated it in part of the pre-show. And then this was one of Jason and Cecil's greatest ideas is let's get this thing on before people actually get to the ride, so that when they get to the ride, it's snap and go. It's no more let's fiddle around with it and making sure things are lining up. And so, it's finding these things that are going to work to get the story across, and then finding ways to adopt it to work for a mass audience to allow for volume.
Yeah, I mean, that project, there were very lofty throughput goals. They call it THRC, which is theoretical hourly capacity, ride capacity.
Ride capacity, yeah.
And the THRC, they wanted to try and maintain, over 900 people per hour through an experience.
Yeah, that's a lot.
We ended up delivering on that, and still to this day, Battle for Ire, I know Busch Gardens may just now be opening up here soon, but it's the highest capacity VR experience in the world.
Yeah, still to this day. Yeah. And it's also one of the world's first interactive VRs. Right. It was our first foray into the interactive VR experience. And it's a hybrid approach, but again, the first.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. If you don't mind me asking, what attraction is it?
That's Battle for Ire at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg in Virginia.
Okay.
Paired with a Stewart-based motion platform, so it's got the the 6DOF motion platform attached to it as well. So it's pretty wild.
Honey, we're going to Virginia.
Yeah,
COVID's done.
Yeah, that's right. Bring your own Lysol wipes, and you should be fine. But even still, I mean, they are doing the glasses washing station. We had to kind of retool, a 3D glasses washing station to be able to fit these face masks that you put on so that they can be washed after each individual use, the same way you would handle 3D glasses at a theme park. So we leveraged some existing kind of processes and workflows, things that wouldn't be so foreign to people, and got them to adapt something that got them their capacity goals and kept the lines down. I mean, you could be waiting in that line for 45 minutes, which is a long time, in this day and age. But
yeah, and I see that a lot of these different attractions are now bringing in the fact of the queue lines,
right,
and creating it as being part of the experience within the queue lines. So what have you guys been doing kind of in that area, as part of the story and bringing the story into the kind of queuing and kind of some of the different applications that could be used in those spaces?
Well, there's kind of there's a three-prong approach, actually. The one is, the implementation of virtual queuing, which you're now seeing at Galaxy's Edge at Disney World. Then you also have the kind of batched queuing system like they have at Jimmy Fallon, where you get a color and then you can kind of just hang out in the lobby until they call your number. An airplane terminal almost. And then, finally the more traditional queue, which is, you're in a railed line that zigzags back and forth on end until you get to your destination. In that case, the more traditional queue, I definitely think we've really tried very hard to integrate more and more story into those areas, and more technology, actually, because those are chances where you can have a little bit more of a personal experience with guests. You don't have to worry about that mass effect of trying to deal with 50 or 100 people at a time.
Yeah.
You can kind of have a very small captive audience that is with you for maybe 30 seconds to a minute before moving on, so you can engage with them through that means. Certainly real time has been a huge part of that implementation to tell the story. But our biggest philosophy is that as soon as you are walking up to an attraction, from the exterior facade in through the queue all the way up to the ride, you're being told a story. The ride is just act 3 of the story. So trying to integrate more storytelling into those queue areas is definitely a big focus of ours, and a big design filter as well.
Yeah, and like Jason said, interactive stuff, interactive content, whether it's kiosk, gesture stuff, leveraging projections, leveraging optical illusions, if you will, right, to make it feel like you are talking to a ghost or a hologram or whatever. These are different types of techniques of display mediums that we would probably use in the queue line. I think a really good one would be an example of at Universal, the Harry Potter attraction. It's got the stained glass windows, which are actually like really, really expensive monitors that work really well, because first time I saw it, I could not imagine that that's not just a stained glass window. And then when it came to life, you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. And it really brings you in. It's a very tactful use of technology.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Brittany actually had a great question on the show. She was asking, where do you start when taking on a new project, IP or story? Do you guys also have a method of the approach that you find helps to tell the story the best way possible?
Well, I can tell you, we always want to involve the guest or the audience. What's really unique about themed experiences is, unlike film or television, it's an active experience. So it's more like a video game in that way, where you're an active participant in your story, or at least you feel like you are. So that is something we try to get into all of our experiences, because it gives you, as the viewer, the participant, a sense of agency in your adventure. So that's a big part of one of our big filters, that we want you to have some influence over the story. We have our own process of taking a project from high concept, which is very broad strokes, the same way you would paint a painting. Start with the broad strokes, and then as we go, we kind of set different parameters and kind of expand the goalposts, and continue to detail out that world to the point where we're talking about what model of prop this piece is, and all of that. So we start to block out the overall 3-act structure, Some of these things that are typical in storytelling are things we like to implement. 3-act structure, the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, bringing a climactic moment and creating an emotional arc. Those are all layers of our design process, or kind of design filters for us, that help us get to the final product. And every single one is totally different. In 1 week we may be doing a fantasy project. The next week we're doing, Jane Goodall for National Geographic and a museum exhibit for her. And it's also, different.
Which looks amazing, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Also different formats and different mediums. Some may be museums, some may be theme parks, some may be individual attractions, some may be one-off interactive experiences that are in a shopping mall. So, understanding your medium and the end user and kind of going backwards and working from there is also an important part.
Yeah, I would say it's an important part, not only in designing, not only in designing the experience, but also in designing what you're going to utilize for the experience as well. Yeah. And I know I've got a good friend of mine, Isabel, and of course AJ, that's been on that work in the live entertainment arenas a lot. And a lot of that also has to play in what the audience is going to experience when they're there. And I think that's really common ground that we kind of see flow across all kinds of different market segments when we kind of really get down to it, because we're all telling stories just in different types of ways, and we're all basically catering to an audience and being able to find out what those needs or what those reactions are going to be, and how to adapt and move and change to them.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's universal, really. Some of these processes, you just have to adapt them for whatever your goal is. And that's how we get a lot of our projects done. We put these kind of parameters. At this point, I think it's pretty natural to us that these are all building blocks, and we start with the raw material and drawing stuff on whiteboards, and then from there we start to sketch it and then color it in, and then we 3D model it and we render it. That same process, we go from the broad strokes and start to work into detail.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's again, kind of the main foundations of the way all great things are created.
100%.
So I want to ask you guys, what's been one of your biggest challenges in working inside of the industry? What space, or even a project or something that's kind of come across your plate where you just kind of scratched your head and went, I have no idea how we're going to get this done or how I'm going to get there?
I think we say that with every project.
That's actually half the fun.
Yeah, it is.
Every single one of them.
Every single one. Every time we get approached with something, this goes back to the passion. It's we're like, okay, how do we challenge ourselves to do something totally different out of the box? Because we're not going to copy paste. So every single one, we're totally rethinking how are we gonna get this done from a process standpoint. I mean, we talked about the stages, but there's a lot of ways to skin a cat there. What software we're using, how we're rendering things, if we're using real time, looking at the latest technologies and how we can pull those in. Those are all things we're definitely thinking about. And so I would say with every project, we're throwing down the gauntlet, and then we're trying to figure out through and innovating through that kind of process. And if you're not challenging yourself, you're not going to be growing. As a creative, as a professional, in any way. So that's really my short answer.
How about yourself?
Yeah.
Staying agile and using the appropriate technology, right?
Yeah.
We made a huge shift back at the studio, 4 years ago, maybe now, where we see it, we know GPU technology is what's going to allow us to iterate faster. It's going to allow us to be more, just to create more. And so from that, now we're kind of leveraging next deal is, okay, we've been using GPU technology, but in what way? How, and the buzzword being real time, to many people, real time is different. In the visual effects world, if you're getting 2 frames a second, it could be real time. In gaming, they need 60. And so the analog of understanding what the technologies that are going to be used for the appropriate task at hand, and not being afraid. We're all afraid. Change is scary, but we look at the problem and we're like, man, how are we going to do this? And rather than being like, well, this is what we've got, and we have to shove it through this. And even though it's not the right way, we full on evaluate everything we've done in the last 3 years and be like, yo, it might be just time for a change and adopting this new workflow to maximize our outputs and results and just get a better product to our client. It's just you can't get stuck in what you know works. You got to challenge it.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, time and time again. Again, I'm not going to talk about a lot of my past experiences, but that is pretty much the case every single step of the way. Is hit the wall, go back, assess, work it out, hit the wall, go back, assess, work it out, and just keep on pushing a little bit forward every single notch.
Right.
So you've got something that, I don't think that we're ever really, truly, completely satisfied, but
Never.
because we are our own worst critics.
Yeah.
Jason, we used to deal with render times like crazy. We're like, oh, single frame, 24 hours. We're like, oh my God, this is killing us. And then computers advance, and now we've got 20 times the power, and we're using all this new tech, and it's like, all right, we still hit 20-hour render, even though we've got 20 times the, and it's just crazy.
So that's the thing is, as you increase your bandwidth, you're going to keep pushing the limits of that bandwidth too. It's like that with like everyone's hard drive always has like 10% left, right? Everyone's, that's just the nature of things. We're always, if we have more space, we're going to use it. If we have more technology, more power, we're going to use it, and push it to the limit. So, hey, this experience, we have the technology. Let's go 120 frames per second. Let's do 3D. Let's do a full dome, with this. So we're just kind of constantly thinking about, okay, knowing what our parameters are, how do we get to that 90 to 100% utilization?
Don't worry, guys. The PS5 is coming out at Christmas. We're just going to load up on those. Problem solved.
That's right. Yeah. We always kind of push to the peak of our bandwidth, right? And that's a good thing, I think.
When I was at Dave's School, I always used to tell the students there, it's like, listen, they did Jurassic Park 1 on machines that were 32 bits, right? No more than 2 gigabytes of RAM. And at that time, and even today, you watch it holds up because of how well they executed that, right? Yep. And now
optimization,
100 times the computational capacity, and sometimes even our phone. And the students would complain, hey, it's just computers suck. They're not fast enough or whatever. I'm like, no, use your tool appropriately, and I promise you'll make some good stuff.
Without a doubt. My friend AJ wrote, yeah, break all the toys.
That's right.
Break them, fix them, make them better.
Mm-hmm.
So George is asking, what are the main tools to software that you guys use, draft, render, or for reporting?
So we'll start with design, and of course we have all the office, general office stuff. But from a design standpoint, we use Photoshop quite a bit, Illustrator and AutoCAD, SketchUp, Rhino, and Revit. Really, primarily on our design side, which is all our architecture based. The 3D side, and Saham can speak to this too. But we're using Maya, ZBrush, Houdini. Our primary renderer is Redshift, which was one of the very first GPU renderers on the market. And then from a real-time perspective, we
still going strong.
Yeah, we use Unity and we use Unreal, and then we obviously use the Adobe suite there with editorial, Substance Designer, Substance Painter. We have a lot of kind of branching out software packages, a lot. I mean, Saham could probably list them all off, but every other week I know we're getting some kind of new software or new plugin, and testing it out or doing an evaluation. We've in the last few years we've gotten a lot more into motion capture and different motion capture technologies. So that's been a big part of our recent expansion.
I think we could take up another whole show actually talking about mocap.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. For sure, where mocap has gone. I mean, actually, just the other day, Unreal launched an iPhone app.
FaceLink.
Yeah, FaceLink, to be able to track your face, and it's quite remarkable. I mean, all done on your phone, and boom, you're good to go.
Look, they're putting LiDAR scanners on iPads now. They're putting,
that democratization. these sensors that are coming onto consumer devices, like mocap. Back in the day, I remember my first mocap system was a magnetic motion capture system that had to be crazy calibrated. You wear sensors all over your body. Couldn't be on rebar on the floor. Had to be floating in the air. And that was a $100,000 system. Move forward, then you got these Vicon mocap systems. Those are like, $250,000, $500,000. But now you can get full body mocap, maybe not as accurate as an optical system, but for like $3,000.
Yep.
It's like, oh my gosh.
We've got some good friends of ours just down the road that are doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a really fun and interesting time right now to be alive inside of the technology ecosystem, especially I think in what we're working on and what we're doing now. It's definitely super exciting. I call it like a pivotal moment and change in the way that we're doing things. And I think we're going to start to see a lot of we're already seeing it, but I think this is kind of the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, on what we're going to see coming up in the next 5 years.
There's a phrase I think Jason's heard me say at least a couple of times now. It's like I've been pitching. It's like we're entering the technological renaissance. We're going to find new ways in using tools that have just not been used before, and things that are getting into the hands of artists and creators that normally wouldn't have access to this stuff. And so it's just kind of a explosion of new ways of doing things. It's really cool.
Funny story, we got into the GPU side, I think it was around 2016.
Yep.
And we were buying up all these GPUs to build our farm. And, little did we know, within a couple months, Bitcoin became a thing. We were all mining. So we couldn't get our GPUs from China or wherever because everybody was swooping them up. So you would never think, hey, we're switching to GPU. Now they're going to use it to do blockchain.
It's true. It's very, very true. I kind of keep on kicking myself going, man, why didn't I jump on that bandwagon? Man, why didn't I jump on that bandwagon? But hey,
Saham got in pretty early, I think.
Happens definitely to the best of us. So just for those of you viewing, I usually do a soft close of the show at around 45. We run a little bit over. I just wanted to thank everybody for viewing today. We're going to continue the discussion, but I wanted to at least take a little bit of time to now thank you guys, Saham and Jason, for coming on the show with me today. It's been a lot of fun. I personally really enjoyed the time, and I appreciate your time being on the show. For those of you watching, if you guys want to check out some of the work and some of the things they've been working on, check out www.falconscreativegroup.com is where you can find more information for the guys and a lot of the works that they're doing. And also please come in and join us again next week. I've got a guest from ESI Design coming on with me next week. And
those guys are great.
Yep. So we've got Andrew Lazaro coming on as a senior designer speaking about design. And we'll be kind of digging a little bit deeper into conceptual design and designing a lot of the different installations and works that they've been working on as well. So yeah, that's what we're going to be up to next week. So guys, I want to keep you guys on just a little longer. And we've kind of covered a lot of different grounds over the course of this time, but I also wanted to kind of find out how you guys feel the storytelling is changing currently within the themed environments and how it's evolving.
I think, we touched upon it a little bit earlier. I think it's going to be integrating more of the idea of gamification into and personalization and customization into experiences where people have a little bit more control over their experience and more option in that way so they can custom tailor it. I think that's ultimately where the industry is heading, where you have a lot of ability to kind of craft it to the way you like it, and that's going to help draw people out. The biggest thing about working in location-based entertainment or out-of-home entertainment is creating an experience you can't get at home. We all have big screen TVs now. We all have great, gaming consoles. We have PCs. How do we get people to come out of their house and draw them out and give them the same creature comforts that they get from home, but in an experience that they can't receive at home?
Yeah.
Agency of your journey is really what's going to be coming is a big thing, and storytelling is no longer linear, but fully customizable, fully many branching narratives could be created. And I think we saw Netflix this year or last year with Bandersnatch, trying that in a linear storytelling medium and created a branching storyline never done before. That's pretty cool. So
yeah, that was really awesome.
I think you're right on tack there. Also, I think I see a lot more fully immersive created environments. Like one of the very first, I think, big impacting fully immersive environments, of course, was Harry Potter World at Universal Studios, where when you're there, you're fully immersed within that complete environment. And I think we're starting to see a lot more of that fall across a lot of these theme parks. For example, Super Mario Brothers World that just recently opened up over in Asia. And seeing these fully immersive, basically themed entertainment attractions taking its form and taking its place.
I think it's kind of the standard now. I mean, I think, Pandora, certainly, Disney and Universal have constantly been challenging each other to up their game. But now, that's kind of the expectation is people are going to go to a theme park. They expect to be entering another world. So definitely the immersion factor has to be there. Without a doubt.
So Tracy was asking, why have only 3 to 5% experienced VR?
So that was a stat, and this was back in 2018 when we were looking this up. Very few people have actually been exposed to it and had a chance to put a headset on their head. I mean, it's a consumer product right now. I think by doing some of these other installations, I think that is certainly a way you can get more people to experience it and adopt it. But really, it's kind of its own little niche, and a lot of gamers and people that are interested in technology have tried it. But when you look at the grander scheme of youth and adults and people over over the age of 40 or 50, their appetite for VR isn't there per se. Yeah. I remember when VR, this was probably around the same time, they started to have these pop-up locations. And I took my father to one when I was visiting him, and he was blown away. He'd never seen or experienced anything like that. And I think that it's actually very engaging and very attractive once you've tried it. But for a lot of people, they just, they don't have any initial interest in doing so until they've tried it. They really don't know what they're missing.
Yeah, it's a lot of that. It's accessibility. It's being developed as we go. There weren't tools to create this stuff. Now you can do. I mean, you've been able to do it, but VR on your phone and keep an eye on it. Very
Google
soon.
Cardboard.
Yeah, but very soon you might be able to do VR without a headset. Keep an eye out.
So more family stories. I got a birthday card for my father, of course, but it was a VR birthday card, and you open it up, and there's a little Google Cardboard type device. You put your phone in, and it actually has some VR movies that it links you to, and he went skydiving, which was totally cool. I think I was working on him to get him into it, but a lot of people, if they're not exposed to the technology. And obviously the price of entry is high, and it's not ubiquitous. There hasn't been, I think, a tentpole reason for a lot of people to adopt it. It's one of the reasons why it doesn't come packaged with consoles or anything like that yet. Until that happens, I think it's going to still have a slow adoption rate.
I think Saham hit it on the head for accessibility. I think accessibility has been a big factor. Budget, of course, and the affordability of it has been a big factor. But I also believe that the technology actually hasn't really been to a point where it makes it easy or conveniently accessible.
Yeah, I mean, it is literally being written as we speak, right? WebGL and all these things that are kind of being developed to allow for this to be as easy as possible as visiting a website, not install this app, buy this, do that. It's like, no, I just want to see this, let's go. And so it's been a progression. VR as in its current form, right? VR isn't new, but VR in its current form is still in its infancy. It's being worked on as we go. So,
and for those of you who don't know about it, it's been around for a very long time. It's actually been around since the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
that, speaking of childhood experiences from way earlier, that was another huge impact was Disney Quest and experiencing VR. They had those huge duckbill things that came about 2-3 feet off your head that they actually had a cable suspending and holding it up. But
$250,000 SGI system driving one person.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
So, I mean, Disney Quest for me was also a major game-changing moment as far as seeing technology and how it can be utilized. And you had some really creative, very, very, innovative people at Disney Imagineering that developed that space. And that also did blow me away and really kind of changed my trajectory into more technology-based.
Yeah, it's fun how those things all influence us in so many different ways.
Yeah.
One of the big ones for me was actually a live event, and it was one of U2's older tours, and seeing some of the tech that they used on the show. And back in, I'm going to venture to say like early 90s, late 80s. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. I've got to get myself into this, and start figuring out different ways to get into the behind the scenes work in working in live event technology. So I wanted to kind of take one last question. And she's been very, very patient with us. We've already covered. I think a little bit of this question from a little earlier, and I really hope I don't mess up her name. So it's Tahira Lily. She was asking, what does the team at Falcons typically look like, and how do you collaborate between individuals coming from a technological or technology background with those coming from an art and storytelling background?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, your assumption there is totally right. We're very dynamic. I would say that most of our traditional artists still have an interest in technology, and most of the people that are into technology have an interest in art. And going back to that passion, having interest in all these things allows you to have an open mind and experience and be able to talk to each side, even though you don't have to be an expert. So, we're all part of a larger conversation here. I think one of the really unique things about Falcons is we're very democratic in allowing everyone to have a voice. You could be an intern and have the best idea in the room. We're really not shy about where great ideas come from or how do we get there. And that's a big part of our culture is problem solving and working through these things and educating each other. We do sessions they call Falcons Academy, where we'll get everybody into our theater space. Of course, it's a little bit different right now. We're doing it all through Teams, but typically, we'll all get lunch and we'll learn a new topic or a new discipline, and we'll have everyone from artists to business development people talking about sales to some of the technology guys down to specific departments. Effects departments or character rigging that will come and talk, and we'll have the vast majority of the company participate.
Yeah, culturally, I think the company is always about cross-pollination, right? Like I can't tell you how many times I've walked over the design team or the production guys, and I learned something, and nobody's afraid to teach, and I think that's really the fun part of being here is I could just learn from everybody, and nobody's a master of everything, but together in this group, we are awesome.
Yeah,
that you guys absolutely are. And with that, I think it's a great place to start the closing of the show.
We can keep going for hours, I'm sure. So
yeah, it's always
we could run for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
But guys, I wanted to thank you guys for coming on the show with me today. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure having both of you here. For those of you watching, again, if you want to check them out, www.falconcreativegroup.com. And next week we have on Andrew Lazaro from ESI Design. So that's going to be a really fun conversation as well. So guys, thank you for coming on board. And to all the viewers, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for all of your support week after week. You guys have been absolutely amazing. Love and hugs and virtual stuff.
Thank you
all. And to all of you, please continue staying ahead of the curve. Thanks for coming and thanks for watching.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.